Good morning, everyone. Green Room, YouTube. So I guess the question here is the market bounce over? And, yesterday's bounce was somewhat expected, after a drop like what we saw. The gap down under these two bottoming tail bars, that was not expected at all. But just looking at the move from the high down to this point into support, it just made sense that it was in the area. It could have gapped down yesterday. It didn't. It gapped up. And whenever we see a gap up, we look at, well, how significant of a gap up? And you can see the opening price almost up near the prior bars open. It's pretty significant. So an impressive gap there. But nonetheless, this is broken down. The weekly is pulling back into support within an uptrend. So, China rhetoric and all that stuff aside, just technically looking at the chart, this should set up a buy setup here within the next week or two. And I guess that all makes sense. It's based on news filtering through whatever they're going to say as far as who's going to do what or not. Now, the risk here, the risk is always based on what we do and money management. But what I'm thinking is, okay, this is black and white as far as a pullback into support after a new high and a buy setup. Right? That's black and white. Now, what you want to look for here as that begins to set up is, first of all, do we get the stabilization and the try to turn? And of course, this should be green. But if it was red, and if it was a red bar, then maybe it could gap up and go. Either way, once this sets up, I am assuming that it is going to set up because of the support here. Once this sets up, if it fails, I'm just giving you scenarios here. If it should fail, well, then you look what we call look for a measured move to the downside here. Right, the first move, the second move, that would shoot prices probably down into this area, give or take. So we'll see what happens. And as this unfolds, we'll update, pre-market and in the green room throughout the trading day as to what's happening in multiple time frames and market internals. Yesterday, at the end of the day, we discussed in the room the fact that while yesterday's rally was impressive as it was moving up throughout the trading day, and the white part is what's happening throughout the trading day. The gray part is pre-market. It was coming into hourly downtrends, and lots of stocks were still in hourly downtrends because of the extent of this move. So this move up was up into the area where sellers would be on the hourly time frame. And now we're looking for how far does that follow through today. And as you can see, there was an attempt to move up, and now it's pushed down. And is it going to come down here and break the low? And we'll see how today shapes up throughout the trading day and where it ends at the end of the trading day, and that'll give us some indication as to where things will be going. Alex Sammy, an angle of retracement spine. Well, it's a pretty sharp angle of retracement. It doesn't look so bad on the weekly here. So when we look at angles of retracement, and let's just, talk about this kind of an angle versus a bullish angle where prices initially maybe start moving up, and it's more of a what's called a bull flag kind of an angle where it just kind of drifts down. And those happen after a sharp move up, which creates what we call a price void below. And that flag, or a very slight angle to the downside, you typically see attempts to go down where you got like a bottoming tail bar or a red bar ignored where it comes back up. So we have, let's just call it big patterns, and then we use bar by bar analysis for details as to what's happening in those big patterns to give us confirmation as to what our big picture bias is. And that's a good way, to look at this as to what's your big picture bias, then look at individual candle combinations as to confirmation or the lack thereof. So what I was explaining here was this pullback on the weekly time frame. And I really don't like the gaps, of course, but this market has been a little, you know, Mr. Schizophrenic, as I've called it. Bar by bar, this should set up a buy setup. So when we look at patterns, we look at historically what's supposed to happen. And we have two scenarios. So the one scenario is the buy setup sets up. Imagine if there was a bottoming tail bar here, that would increase the probability of going up. And that happens, well, it goes up and tests 300. Well, what if it sets up and you get a big red bar engulfing that and it fails? Well, then that gives us a bias of a measured move lower. And because of this, the extent of this move up, there's little support underneath there, or almost no support. So we'll just have to see how it unfolds right now. We're in a correction mode. As prices have pulled back here, the weekly, the daily is no longer in an uptrend. It's broken through support, at major support, the low prior to the higher high. So it's no longer meets the definition of an uptrend. So now we could say it's in a sideways trend. It's not in a downtrend yet, since we don't have lower highs and lower lows. Nonetheless, it's in a correction mode, and this 200-day seems like a pretty likely downside target for institutions to want to at least give it a shot down there. And the faster it goes down there, the better. The more it goes sideways here, if that should happen, well, that kind of refills the supply tank, to drive prices lower from there versus just going down and exhausting the move to the downside and then setting up a reversal. So we look at patterns, they suggest what should happen, and then bar by bar tells us what is happening. Qs, similar scenario, right? Down a bit further into support, the same hourly sell setup, and looks like I don't have the news on here, but that looks like kind of reaction to the news. A little blip up and a blip down there at around 8 o'clock. So we'll see. Same story, pulling back here. We'll see. Maybe it goes down to the 200. But, yesterday it gave back some at the end of the day. Makes sense as it came up into some resistance. And we'll see where this ends up. Maybe inside day today. I don't know what's going to get the markets moving one way or another, but we'll just see how the patterns unfold once the markets open. Russell had a good day, but in the video that I sent out last night, I went over a bunch of 1, 2, 3 setups that a subscriber had sent to me and asked me what I thought. And rather than just answering him, I did a video and sent it out to everybody. If you didn't get it, email me, Greg at Master Trader. Happy to send it to you. But this is an impressive reversal, but it's in the middle of nowhere. So if this 2-bar reversal was happening down here, that would be great. Now, I would prefer to have had a red bar right down into here, and then that reversal, and that would have been at least a counter trend play into an area of major support versus happening in the middle of nowhere. So don't like that pattern at all. Similar to the transports, a reversal gap up, just I guess a technical reaction. But interestingly, the weekly chart looks better here. This bar has still got a bunch, 3 days to go to complete. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this is more of what I would expect to set up on the spiders, pushing up to a higher high and then a pullback and a bottoming tail bar as a buy setup. So, right now, as I said, correction mode. We'll see how it unfolds here. Hourlies are still in a downtrend. And what I like to see, while weekly is in an uptrend, daily is in a downtrend, I like to see the hourly begin to base out and, go into a sideways trend. And that is a heads up as to the turn beginning to come and then unfold into the daily chart and in alignment with the weekly chart. Okay. Mid caps, pretty much the same as the Russell. And just looking at the futures here, you can see a little cleaner pattern as far as the retracement into the green bar. So wide range bar down into support, the gap down, buyer step up, hourly rolling back over again. think we got some more downside to go before this weekly sets up in an ideal scenario. Even if we close this week positive, this is just not a good setup. If this was a positive close because of the very shallow retracement on the weekly, it's better to pull back a little bit more, chop around, get this pattern here cleaner before a turn. And you can see this is coming down. Let's just go to the 5 minutes since we're looking at the futures. So a little attempt to make a turn here. They couldn't do it. And well, this looks like it's going to continue to move lower. Now, I don't like this setup. For those of you that are intraday traders, historically, this is not a good sell setup because it's coming after a little bit of a climactic run to the downside and a wide range bar. And it's so close to this prior low, you could get whipsawed on a setup like that. So something you might want to keep in mind and track on your own. In addition, you can see it's coming into an area of a prior pivot low there. So some price support. So that suggests to me, as we get closer to the open, which is still 15 minutes, those that might short this market because of weakness might get a little bit of a stick in the eye, so to speak, meaning a whipsaw type of scenario here. So in this kind of a pattern, what you want to see is it goes sideways for a while and an inability to try and bounce, which you can see what it's doing right now. It's trying to bounce off of that low after this little climactic run, and we'll see what it does. If it goes sideways, and that would show an inability to move up, well, then you might consider shorting a break below the low with a move back down, maybe to the 2,800 level. We'll see. That's what we'll be looking at here after the market opens. And Qs, right? Similar situation coming down here to that prior swing low, retracing into that bar. Daily chart is just nothing. Right? It's just nothing. Consolidating in the lower half of this red bar, which is still bearish. And we'll see if it builds up some support or whether this is going to turn into a measured move down to 7,000. IM has been the weaker, and you can see it's already down past the 200. It's at some price support. Similar pattern on the 60-minute intraday. And this is, the other markets are well above their support and uptrends. The Dow has been weaker. Boeing, I noticed, was down again this morning, so that's putting some pressure on it. You can see there's a lot of red here this morning. It makes sense with the markets being down. And so the question is, does it actually hold this level? So we'll be keeping an eye on this to see if it actually breaks here. And if this starts heading lower with some authority, well, I don't know that all the markets are going to hold up, but part of what we do is monitor multiple markets and see what they're doing and how they're affecting each other. And bonds pushing up to the prior high. And so that's in alignment with this China thing and the economy slowing down, since yields will be dropping. And you can see TBT actually gapping down here. So the yield inversion worries. Right, we'll start raising its head, and we're going to see whether this actually holds this prior low down here on the weekly time frame to make a W bottom, or whether it just keeps going lower. Gold actually looks pretty interesting here. Excuse me. With this wide range bar and the consolidation at the top, we'll see if this can actually hold here. There's buyers on the dip, and GDX, we were talking about this yesterday in the room, as a nice counter trend setup where it poked down here to a new low, popped up, started to retest with this red bar, and then gapped above in yesterday's bottoming tail bar. So that's a nice counter trend pattern since it's got a retest here. So that's something to consider. Maybe a move up to the 50 MA. And crude oil just flip-flopping around here, really not doing too much. Sitting here on support, trying to make the turn. We will see if it does. Just looking at the euro, since there was some news that I saw go by today. It's just been struggling. You know, currencies haven't been doing very well, been choppy. I mean, the yen has started to move up here nicely, but overall, a lot of them, a lot of uncertainty there with a lot of messy patterns and chop. And the reason I'm saying that is that certain markets, whether it's stocks or currencies, whether it's oil, soybeans, there are times where they're out of favor and in favor. So don't get hung up on those that will say, oh, currencies are the most fabulous thing to trade, blah, 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 with the, no commission, which of course you're paying the spread and all of that. But there are markets when they're in favor, they're relatively easy to trade. Whereas when there's a lot of uncertainty, they are awful. So you stay away. And it's okay if you like to trade. This is currency futures, which I think is a more honest instrument to trade versus than Forex. You can bid and you offer. But anyway, you can move from trading, currencies to stocks to equity E-minis and so on. There's no one market that's always the best. The equity markets can go into choppy mode and they could be horrendous as well. So that is it for me. I'll turn it over to Dan for the open and get ready for the day.
All right. Good morning. Thanks. Opens. BYND, we have a half lot, excuse me, put spread for Friday. And that's it for the weekly option trader. Very, very light. X-ray, we bought stock yesterday. Looks like we should be looking at legging into a covered call today. November Sierra, we bought as daily, weekly, monthly, looking for a big target. Close with a topping tail. Maybe leg into a covered call also. Our little maxer 10 baggers, actually relative strength. Look at that, it's actually up today. We sold half for a huge gain and looking to add on a pullback. Curliff, marijuana stock, we bought the breakout 2 days ago. TMUS, we legged into a covered call on the bearish gap down 2 days ago. BA, long stock, and that's it there. Fairly light inventory. All right, gappers and earnings. So yeah, Triple M will, not even worry about them. Alpha here, Agilent, 68.70, very bearish gap, way the heck down here. It's kind of excessive, 10%, so we got to wait. Unit here had a little pop pre-market, now selling off. That's a huge gap way down here. Nothing to do though. ADI, I saw some positive prints up here, so I thought it was relative strength, but nah. Yeah, Boeing was in the news again. Just more bad news, FAA investigations. I have him on the other computer. Archie, relative strength, 541. Kind of trades like a penny stock toy, but that's a bullish gap. You might, if you can get an intraday setup here, maybe a double bottom on the 15. That's a nice day trade setup. Macy's was a lot stronger pre-market. And this is from a Climo also. As I was typing there to Alex, anything showing relative strength from a Climo has my attention. It's in a downtrend, weekly, but approaching major support on the monthly. But it's a deeper retracement, so losing interest in it. These were a few from Greg's video on 123s. Zion here looks like a nice day trade short, opening up at 46. So that looks good. XPO was a 123. SIG was a bear 123 under yesterday's low. Looks good. PBCT looks good. Yesterday's low. MTB, another bank. Now, that was a deeper tail, so it's not a textbook 1, 2, 3, but you know, if it triggers Morgan Stanley 1, 2, 3, and that looks like it's triggering already. It's a gap breakdown, so that you obviously need a bounce. IRDM. It's gapping down a dime, which is fine. That's not much. So that one looks great for a day trade. It's just with the market down so much, you know, we just want to make sure that the market's going to stay weak and not bounce from these levels. XEL is actually a bull 1, 2, 3, but what I don't like is 1, 2, 3s after multiple bars. I like them, and yeah, that's only 2 bars, but I would like it better if this red bar were here. FANG, Trader McGraw, you gave me this one. I like it as a put spread over yesterday's high. Place had earnings or lack thereof, 104.50. Gapping down right here to the 50-day MA, but it's a mess. Let's let it play out. Vert, 23 bucks, very bearish gap, but pre-market, it's finding buyers at these levels. ACB, I know Pat said yesterday they had earnings, and I don't know if it's pre or post-market today, but it's kind of acting like it was pre-market. 8 bucks, it's a total mess. BABA had earnings, was up a lot more obviously earlier. Now it's relatively flat, up a buck, no pattern. Tilray had earnings. Okay, slight, you know, bullish gap up here. I have it in my other window. We'll see if that can get the marijuana stocks going at all. JKS, bearish, this bearish gap. If this is a great 30-minute low setup, I'm not going to mess with Macy's. I'm going to go ahead and put him here. Great 30-minute low setup. All of this is overhead resistance. You got a sell setup on the monthly. Bravo Romeo. I don't know if that came from you, trader. I said let it go sideways, so I'm done with earnings. YOLO. This is the new. Yeah. Hey, Greg, you need to add YOLO to your ETFs. This is Debbie told me about it yesterday. So we got that and Michael Jackson too. Well, and we got 3. We got the REITs. I got our little maxers popping. See, that's the problem. And the Greg, you know, Greg Warren, you know, remember when I sold half yesterday, 22% gain? And I said, we're going to add on a pullback. Now what do you do? It's not pulling back, at least not yet. It's showing relative strength. FANG, we talked about. Ralph Lauren was a Climo yesterday on earnings, big volume. It's a mess here. These are all just leftovers now. Stone, no interest. Beyond, I have on the other computer. Triple L was relative strength in the strong military sector. If this can go sideways for a while, AVP could be a breakout. November Sierra, I have other computer. UNH was a put spread over last Friday's high. I doubt it's going to trigger. BRX, if it can go sideways more, the monthly is holding, but it needs to. Oh, really? There's a lot of bios in there. All right, well, that's an excellent comment. All right, thanks. We'll just stick with Michael Jackson. SPWR is still posted as a valid trade if it hits. I still like it. All time frames. Whiskey. It's going to take time to heal. These are in the other computer. Uber, that was a nice turnaround day yesterday. No options yet. Lift is not ready. Michael Jackson, okay, it's up a little bit. Spiders, I took out yesterday's, we're gapping under yesterday's low. You can, this 15-minute is our microscope. It's, getting deeper into this gap fill now, but this is still support. So we're, wait and see. It's a wait and see morning to see, are we going to stay weak or hold and, build another pivot? 1 minute to go, perfect timing. IWM, kind of the weakest here this morning. Fangs, Apple's weak. Amazon, it's right there on support, but if it fails, it looks a lot lower on the daily. That's a bearish gap, kind of leaving that